Hello and welcome to The World Today. I'm Amarachi Ubani here in Lagos, and you're joining us as Nigeria's President Bola Ahmed Tinubu has visited Yelwata in Benue State and also Daudu communities in the Guma local government area of the state, where over 100 people were killed in attacks that began Friday night and continued into the early hours of Saturday. Just a while ago, the president communicated to the state governor, the heads of security agencies, and the entire state his condolences and plans for restoring peace and order in the state. Earlier in the day, he'd visited victims of the killings at the Benue State University Teaching Hospital, Makodi, as well as the communities where the incident happened. Paramount ruler and king of the Tiv people the paramount ruler and king of the Tiv people, the Tor Tiv, James Ayase, gave his address denouncing those behind the killings as the farmers and herders, but land grabbers who perpetrated the crime. He said some people would prefer that the crisis worsens. He urged the president and heads of security to bring peace to Benue State so that farmers can get back to their farms. Joining us now is Channels Television's Benue correspondent Pius Angbo. He joins us now from Makodi, where he has been monitoring the president's itinerary. Pius, thank you for joining us on the program. And let's go over the president's itinerary today in Benue State. When he arrived, he went to the hospital where he met with those injured. Am I right?
Yes, thank you, Maraki, for this evening, Makodi. The presidential plane touched down at about 5 minutes past 1 p.m. today in the Air Force Base Tactical Air Command. And then he was received by Governor Aysen Talia with some other governors, Governor Hope Uzodinma, Governor Abdullahi Sule of Nasarawa State, and some former governors, senators, members of the National Assembly to receive him. From there, the president's itinerary was that he would take a chopper from the airport to Yelwata, which was like a 7-minute flight. But because of the rainfall, since 5 a.m., there's been heavy downpour in Benue today. So he was advised on weather conditions not to be able to do the chopper flight to Yelwata. But he said, while addressing us, said that from the videos he saw on the news and then the visit to the hospital, he can imagine how severe the attacks had been on the community. And so because of that incident, and of course, the teaching hospital where the injured are taking medical attention is also on the same Boko Makodi highway on your way to the airport. So from the airport, you just go to the hospital, met with some of the victims, particularly children and women, where he paid his sympathy visit and also assured them on efforts to get this crisis under control. And so the visit to Yelwata could not hold because of weather conditions for his flight to the chopper to fly from the airport to Yelwata. But then he moved straight to Government House, where stakeholders drawn from the traditional institution led by the Tor Tiv, Professor James Ayase, and the Otidoma, Dr. John Odogboy Laibu, were meeting leading traditional institutions there. The clergy from both the Christian and the Islamic religions were there. Members from the State of Assembly, National Assembly, service chiefs, as you have them, as key opinion leaders, and some party members. In fact, the national chairman of the All Progressive Congress was also here. So it was a full house to welcome the president, where he took a listen on what had been the issues in Benue from the Tor Tiv as well as the governor, who described this act as a systemic, calculated attempt to annihilate Benue from this land and take over the land.
Pius, what was the mood in Benue State? Now, fortunately, it rained, so not much could have been done as regards, the president going to Yelwa, as you rightly pointed out. But the governor did receive some backlash about school children being out there to welcome the president under the rain. How does that compare with the gravity of what has happened in the state and how people actually expected the mood to turn out on this important day?
I think some of these things are partly due to experience in governance. The governor is new to politics. He came from the church, and then so the fact that he's been receiving serious help from the federal government, maybe the reason why his appointees and people were eager to come out to show the president solidarity on his visit to Benin. But it's been a serious backlash as regards why you declare a public holiday for the president's commiseration visit, or also ask people to wear certain clothes and all that. But I think some of the officials, because this didn't come as official communication from government, the appointees who had made this arrangement, some of them are taking back their posts. Some have made apologies for asking people to wear certain uniform or asking students to come out. But the general mood is that, look, President, you're welcome, but we want solutions to these issues because this thing has happened more than 2 decades. It's been a yearly, in fact, every other day you are hearing killing from dry season to wet season. And so they are not particularly angry at anything, but they just want solution to these attacks so that they can go back to their farms, live their lives. You can't sleep. Even in Makodi here, just after the bridge at North Bank, before the toll gate, last week, 3 persons were killed in Makodi. That's Makodi, the state capital. And so people feel that there need to be more. And this is why the president asked the IG, say, up till now, you don't have arrests. Service chief, what are you doing? I need you to bring this to a halt. This is what the people actually wanted to hear from the president in regards to dealing with the problem. They are not really interested in any semantics with this. We want this problem. They want this problem. That's what they'll be asking the president to do. Let this go away.
So good enough that the president did acknowledge the gravity of the situation, and of course he charged the security chiefs. But did he make any promises before leaving? Because he did say that he was there for the people. He was there not only to commiserate with them, but to also find a solution to the crisis.
Yes, the president most likely was talking about, if you listen from his statements condemning the water attack, he called for reconciliation between farmers and herders, reconciliation among political class. He pretty much dwelled on that discussion today. The demands the Tor Tiv made was that they know the president, if he's willing to do something, he has a knack to deliver it, like he did with first subsidy removal, like he did with insecurity in Para, that he can end that in Benue. That Benue people need to go back to the farm and they can't do so without security protection. Now, when the president was speaking, he sat mostly on issues. I think he has the feeling that political disagreements in the state may be the reason why actors are not closing ranks to work together to nip this problem. Not necessarily because these actors are not behind the attack, but he feels that if they are working together, there wouldn't be room because he said, if you dwell in peace, there won't be problem. But if you open your doors, then the enemies can come in. These were the words he used there. And so to deal with this, he set up a committee comprising all past governors from Benue State, including General Tonkera, who ruled the state in 1984, thereabout, under the Buhari presidential military regime, to join a committee with former governors like George Akume, like Senator Gabriel Suswam, and from immediate past governor Samuel Otom, and then also co-opted the governor of Nasarawa State because of the contiguous border issues, and then the sitting governor of Benue State, Governor Hyacinth Alia, the Tor Tiv and the Ochidoma to also join that committee, that he needs them to be on one page, to work together on like a family, dealing with a problem as a household, and also deal with the external issues. That is why the governor of Nasarawa State is coming in, so that wherever there are overlapping policies, actions, or operations, that can be nipped in the bud. But he has also given them a mandate that they need to reconvene with him in Abuja because he is interested in the peace deal in Benue and he will invest in it. Part of that is to say that, look, my strategy will not be in the public here. I've come to commiserate. I don't want to discuss what we will do to end this. Service chief, police IG, go and do your job. I want the perpetrators out. But you come to me in Abuja. The issues are that there's no unity among you. There's no unity to deal with the cross-border issues. Come to Abuja. Let us develop a plan. I will fund it. He also asked the governor to give him a land that he wants to do ranching as a model in Benue State. I think these are part of the things that we may be discussing because the problem in Benue is that if you have animals roaming freely, grazing, they meet farmers' farm and then eat up their crops. When the farmers come to complain, you don't have this confrontation and it leads to fighting, killing, and all of the attacks that you see. Of course, there are issues, underlying factors like rustling, like militia issues, All of that, I think this committee will be looking at it because as former governors, they would have one or two intel with regards to the root cause, the solutions, and the stages that they can implement those solutions. And so I think that is what the president is looking at. He doesn't want to discuss his strategy, but he gave
Right.
guarantee or assurances to Benue people that he will restore peace, that they were elected to govern and not to bury. That's where his words today. But pretty much he's emphasizing on the governor of Benue State to work with stakeholders, work with the ethnic tribes in Benue, work with everybody to deliver the dividends of democracy to the people. Those were his words.
Before the president came up to give his address was the Tor Tiv, James Ayase, who said that the problem in Benue State is not about the farmers and the herders. He says it's about land grabbers who are perpetrating this crime. Has this ever been addressed in Benue?
Ah, this conflict between herdsmen and farmers started way back in say 2011, thereabout, or even at that. But it was just by having maybe when animals stray into a farmer's and eat his crop, the farmer, knowing where these herders are, reports to his chief. His chief calls the aldo where the herders operate, and they meet and take evaluation of what had been eaten up. Take evaluation of what had been eaten up, costs are made, they pay back what is lost. If a farmer peradventure kills the cattle or whatever is the conflict from there, they make the farmer also to take the valuation of the cost and pay. This was the local model they had. But when in 2011, the introduction of conflicts, attacks on communities, killing, sacking, burning, and then occupation began, it became systemic. From Agatu to the coastal boundary with Gwe West to Makodi to Guma to Logo, all along the River Benue Trough, you see these places are now being inhabited by herdsmen because the farmers have been chased out, they are free to go back to those lands. So now you see that there's a place called Mbatoho. During the regime in the 80s, the plan was they built a Sheraton Hotel in Makodi here. They established a golf course across the river on the other side in North Bank. And then they have the Mbatoho Island down behind the Nasmi Barracks, a three-pronged resort for leisure, for tourism and all that. That Mbatoho Island today has been staffed and is occupied by herdsmen. So this angle of occupation is what the Tor Tiv was talking about, that this conflict no longer look like we're having issues we resolve. People come with AK-47, kill these communities, sack them, burn them like you saw in Yelwata, and then the people are chased away. Over time, some of these communities have been renamed eventually. As you have it in Plateau, it's happening in Benue State. Most of that is also happening. We have lost a lot of substantial farmlands because of the activities of armed herdsmen and the bandits who are also gunning for gold, gunning for mineral resources, lead, zinc, lithium, all in that axis in the Kwande local government. So these are the problems driving it. The question of occupation, the Tor Tiv is saying is this: people can't access their farmlands anymore. If you go to Guma, Guma is the biggest local government in Benue State, Daudu and Bazimba itself, the local government headquarters. Other communities are joining down to Rukudi boundary to River Benue have all been sacked. And nobody can dare step their foot there because you'll be killed.
Well, Pius, thank you so much for painting the picture for us. I know you were in Yelwa a few days ago to see things for yourself. You saw the situation on the ground. What can you tell us that's probably slightly different, from what other news media is reporting about the situation in Yelwa? How resilient are the people despite this crisis?
Is the first Benue community once you cross the Nasarawa border into Benue State. Now, between the Nasarawa land border to Benue border is a green padama that is for lush vegetation used for farming rice and orange plantation by tea farmers. Now, the Elwata town of the Makodi Express Lafia Abuja Highway now is a large community, like I said earlier. This is the first time you're having this kind of magnitude of attack. There have been previous attacks, fight back and all that, but this is the first time the scores are this high. Scores is that, as I spoke to the governor this morning, 151 persons have been confirmed dead. 127 of those persons have been buried. 18 are still unburied in the communities there or recovered from the bushes. These are all aside the ones burnt in the attacks. A woman, 4 children were burnt. Some people's food crop and barn were burnt with them. Now, those calculations we have not been able to factor that from emergency response because you have to do DNA, excavations, debris, recovery, and all that. So there are more casualties. But the community is not vacating because they are actually a large community. There is a station presence of Operation Weststroke at the primary school there. So there is a sense of security. On the day of attack, there were 4 of those soldiers and then some personnel of the civil defense. 2 of those soldiers were killed and 1 civil defense person. I think what they have done now is reinforcement because when the chief of defense staff came and the IGP came, they deployed to that area. So the community have some sense of confidence that yes, we have presence of security right now. So there isn't need to vacate these premises and this community for now. But you see, the long term is this security won't be there for long. And even if there are, how many of them will be on ground? And that's why the communities are asking that if you can't deploy enough to man the borders, spanning from Logo down to Agatu, there are about 6 local governments on the coastal line with Nasarawa State, begin to give us opportunities to defend ourselves because the response time from security to communities when there are attacks is huge. This attack in Yelwata, for instance, went on for almost 4 or 5 hours, unchallenged, because the security were overwhelmed. I heard that from eyewitness account that I interviewed that over 200 of them, armed men, came. So if you have 4 soldiers, it will take the grace of God that you're able to even stand that fight. And that's why they lost 2 of their personnel. So it requires a multi-level approach that communities will be self-aware, so communities will be able to also respond to their threats before security can also come to their aid. I think that's the line the chief of defense was talking about yesterday, that there was a model he developed when he was operation commander in Borno State, that they identify credible youths without blemish of past criminal records, train them, put them under the supervision of the army to begin to respond to security threats and hold back until they can get reinforcement from the conventional security services to defend their ground, and that will work there. So we're looking at that model will be deployed in Benue communities because we have vast borderlands that are open and prone to these attacks.
Well, Pius, thank you so much. You have given us an extensive understanding of the situation in Benue State as regards the president's visits to the state. Thank you again, and do stay safe, Pius.
Thank you very much.
We'll take a short break now. On the world today, still ahead, Iran and Israel continue airstrikes in the country. We'll also be looking at the weather in Asia. Some places really hot, and some places a volcano is erupting. Stay with us. Welcome back. Still watching the world today. Iran's supreme leader, the Ayatollah Khamenei, says any form of U.S. military intervention will undoubtedly be met with irreparable harm. He was making this comment in a televised broadcast where he says that wise people who know Iran, its people, and its history never speak to this nation in the language of threats because Iranians are not those who surrender. This comes as the U.S. president is considering joining Israel's strikes against Iran's nuclear sites. Khamenei says that the Americans and those familiar with the politics of this region know that the U.S. involvement in this matter will be entirely to the detriment, and it will suffer a blow that will be far more damaging than any harm may come to Iran. Well, in addition to this, Iran's chief of staff of the armed forces, Major General Abdurrahim Mousavi, threatened Israel with an imminent punitive strike. In a recorded message, Mousavi urged residents of Israel, especially Tel Aviv and Haifa, to leave these areas immediately to maintain their safety. According to him, the operations carried out so far have served as a deterrent warning, and a punitive operation will be carried out soon. Regional tensions have escalated since Friday when Israel launched coordinated airstrikes on multiple sites across Iran, including military and nuclear facilities, prompting Tehran to launch retaliatory strikes. Israeli authorities said at least 24 people have been killed and hundreds injured in Iranian missile attacks since Friday. And the streets. I want to bring in our Washington correspondent, Maria Bird, to look at some of these issues. Maria, thanks for joining us on the program. And I would really love to know what Americans think about President Trump's involvement in this war between Israel and Iran. Are the president's supporters backing some of these things that he's saying?
Yes, the supporters of the president obviously are supporting him in this effort. They're a bit cautious, I would say. I think the U.S. is not familiar with having this type of potential war on U.S. soil, even though that hasn't been stated yet. But as you hear Iran mentioning the all-out war that would ensue, I think that Americans are not quite clear on what that actually means. But those Americans who might have been on the Democratic side of the House, or even Americans that are Republicans but might not have the strong support of the president or strongly support the president, because we know we have seen some polling recently which is typical for any president in his first year to have polling done, which doesn't show the same level of support that it showed prior to him taking office, that they are a bit concerned. I think the concern is really around whether the U.S. should be involved to this extent and the Israel-Iran attacks, and whether or not the president should be calling for a full surrender by Iran. And even as we have noted and have seen, even looking at their supreme leader and where his whereabouts and discussions with Israel around that and his potential fate. And so I think the question now is really whether or not Americans are going to call for Congress to do more to impede upon the president's actions, especially since there's still question around whether or not the U.S. will get involved with any airstrikes.
So, just going over some of the things that the president has said. I may or may not do it. He left the G7 summit, giving the impression that it was because of the airstrikes between Israel and Iran. He was going to help negotiate a ceasefire. And then he later said this was not the case, condemning what the French President Emmanuel Macron had said about him going to negotiate a ceasefire. I'm just trying to point out, Maria, it can be tedious keeping up with how the president feels about this war.
Yes, it is quite a challenging piece. As we know, he left the G7 summit. There was a call for members of his cabinet to be available to join him in the Situation Room as soon as he arrived back in Washington. We have not yet get clarity around what that meeting ensued, if that meeting actually provided any insight into his stance as it relates to how he was planning to help negotiate the deal. As you mentioned, he's also said that there is never too late, but it is getting a bit late for negotiations. And so there is some concern whether or not he will be able to assist with negotiations between Israel and Iran. And we know that there has been a clear stake in the ground where the U.S. stands with Israel, even to the point where U.S. potential involvement. Even in prior administrations, when we talk about Ukraine and Russia, the U.S. has been very clear of where they provide support, but not having boots on the ground or any type of actual involvement from the U.S. military. And this sounds to be a bit different, aside from just financial support and resource support, but potentially actually having U.S. military involvement, which, as you mentioned, may or may not happen. I guess at any moment we could find that out. And if there's any press release or press conference that could happen later on today, maybe we'll find out more.
Maybe it is also a problem of the mode with which the president chooses to communicate his thoughts. We're finding out about what President Donald Trump wants and likes via social media. He never really answers any questions in press conferences. I don't know if I'm right or wrong, but I've observed no real questions are answered. While on Air Force One, all the way from Canada, he did say, Iran needs to negotiate with Israel. He doesn't have a plan. And then he comes down and then he says, Iranians need to evacuate Tehran. And then he says, they already know where the Ayatollah Khamenei is, but they will not, of course, take him out. They're giving him time. They want Iran to negotiate with the United States. When was the last time America had a president like this? I mean, I know that, social media is big, quite an important aspect now of diplomacy as people use it to, negotiate and engage, where they are as concerns relations. But what does it say about the kind of president that America currently has and the type of decisions that he makes and how the rest of the world views these decisions that he makes via social media?
Well, we saw this in his first administration. We saw that we received information and news not from our traditional measures, which was during press conferences, but through social media. That was a trend that was started in his first administration. So I don't think it's a surprise to many. I think that he has come in and was very clear during the campaign that he was coming to be different and coming to do something that was outside of the traditional political framework that the U.S. has in place. In his first administration, he was very clear that he was not a politician, and he believed the U.S. needed some type of change. And I think in this administration, he's looking for having world change, and he's looking to be a very different, out of the box way in which he operates. We can see as it relates to, even if you look at tariffs, he has been very fluid back and forth. He will have very harsh tariffs one day, and then the next day you can see a complete turnaround. And so I think that that's the way in which his strategy around governing, which is very outside of what I think Americans are used to, and is putting a very different slant on the way foreign affairs, not only the U.S. With other countries, but also countries with one another. And so this is, I think, going to be something that we're going to see throughout the administration. And the question is how world leaders will respond and if they will continue to fall in line and follow through with kind of what we've seen over the last few months.
I'm glad you mentioned leaders and American lawmakers their voices are missing when it comes to, these issues regarding Israel. We really haven't heard much, from the House of Representatives or from the Senate about, what the president is planning, what the administration intends to do, and if Americans will have to decide whether or not to join in the war against Iran.
Yes. Now, this will, if the president announces that the U.S. is going to join in on the war, that's executive privilege, but that will definitely bring Congress to question. Congress is already beginning to think about ways in which they will be able to address this. They know this is a thought of the president. As we can clearly see, there is a clear separation between the Congress and the executive branch, which is the Trump administration, and the judicial branch of government. The U.S. is outlined in framework to have this balance of power between the three areas of government. But we know that with this administration, you're heavily focused on executive orders and executive movement. And then a lot of times you'll see the judicial system come back and try to create change or to stop some executive orders that have gone forth. And Congress obviously will have their role around legislation. So I'm not sure if they'll be able to stop the president if he moves forward, but they are clearly putting things in place to try to ensure that they put the legislative measures in place to address it in the way in which Congress believes the U.S. involvement between the Iran and Israel conflict.
Well, thanks again, Maria. Still a lot to talk about, but I guess still a lot to expect from the U.S. President Donald Trump. Thanks again. Well, speaking of which, President Donald Trump is considering, as we have rightly pointed out, whether or not to join Israel's strikes on Iranian nuclear sites as the conflict continues. Today is the sixth day, and angry rhetorics ramp up on all sides. American strikes could involve using superior weaponry to hit an underground nuclear site at Fordo, according to sources who spoke to media on the ground. The president met with his national security team on Tuesday, to discuss the next steps. Israel and Iran have been exchanging these deadly strikes since Friday. Analysts say Trump's comments suggest a willingness to join the Israelis, despite his call for de-escalation and his vocal support for a diplomatic solution to limit Iran's nuclear research. He's shown increasing frustration over a perceived lack of progress to secure a new deal that will be aimed at preventing Iran from building a nuclear weapon. Trump pulled out of a previous accord with Iran during his first term. In a social media post on Tuesday, Trump threatened the Iranian Supreme Leader, the Ali Khamenei, saying that he knew where he was. In Trump's words, he's an easy target, but he is safe there. We are not going to take him out, at least not for now. We don't want missiles shot at civilians or American soldiers. Our patience is wearing thin. And as tensions continue to rise in the Middle East, Russia has issued a stern warning to the U.S. to stay out of the Iran-Israel conflict. Speaking in New York, the Russian UN representative Vasily Nebenzia warned that there is a risk of an all-out war as the conflict grows by the day following Israel's recent strikes on Iranian nuclear facilities. Nebenzia said neither side appears ready to negotiate, with Iran under fire and Israel showing no signs of seeking mediation despite offers from Russian President Vladimir Putin and his Turkish counterpart Recep Erdogan. He cautioned that the current level of conventional attacks could engulf the entire Middle East in a broader confrontation, even without nuclear weapons in play. The ambassador urges the U.S. to hold back militarily, even as it continues to support Israel with weapons and political backing. Well, the Philippines has begun repatriating citizens from conflict zones in the Middle East as violence between Israel and Iran escalates. 8 Filipino workers, including mothers and children, stranded in Dubai, landed safely at Ninoy Aquino International Airport in Manila. They'd been stranded in transit due to the conflict. Secretary of Migrant Workers Hans Leo Kadak said more citizens are on the way, mentioning that 17 others remain stranded in Dubai and are next in line for repatriation. He also confirmed that 2 Filipino workers were injured in recent Iranian missile strikes. One is in critical condition in an Israeli ICU, while the other is in a stable condition. Well, there are estimated 30,000 Filipino nationals in Israel. They've been asked to seek shelter immediately.
17 ang papunta dapat ng Israel pero stranded ngayon sa Dubai, so iuwi natin sila. And then merong isang nakikiusap ng repatriation from Iran, and then 150 in Israel. So we're all working on the repatriation of the Filipinos needing repatriation in both Israel and Iran. Meron din tayong advice not to indulge in passing on, endorsing, or creating misinformation or fake news. So mag-ingat din sa aspeto na yon, no? Especially types of information that will tend to aggravate, no? Or set off unnecessary alarms from within the Filipino community in Israel.
Well, let's talk some more about this now. Joining me is international relations analyst Charles Chukwunaru. He's in Alberta, Canada. Charles, thank you for joining us on the program today. And I know that you have had, a few days to, analyze what's been going on between Israel and Iran. And of course, your neighbor, Donald Trump's rhetoric regarding the war between the two nations. What do you think President Trump wants to be? Do you think he wants to be actively involved in this?
Well, Amarachi, thank you for having me. The answer is straight. He's already actively involved. In fact, this morning, about 1.5 hours ago, 2 hours ago, he was addressing the press in front of the White House. He said he gave them 60 days. He's talking about Iran. He gave them 60 days to come and negotiate a deal, and they failed. And on the 61st day, well, we all know what happened on the 61st day. Israel struck. And he went further to say that the 61th day is going to be historic. On his Truth social media platform, he ordered civilians in Tehran to evacuate. He said, we have total control of the Iranian airspace. He said, we know where the so-called supreme leader is hiding. We don't want to take him out. In parentheses, he said, kill. At least not yet.
What do you make? What do you make
So
of these kinds
what
of
that tells
rhetoric
you
from?
clearly is that he is involved, because he's using the word we, means that he is a co-owner of the action. He's owning the actions of the Israel IDF. That means he is actively involved.
So it would suppose that the U.S. is possibly fighting this war by proxy, fighting Iran by proxy, obviously, because you see President Donald Trump almost mirroring what the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is saying about Iran. Just a few weeks ago, the U.S. did not believe that Iran was enriching uranium for nuclear weapons purposes. But all of a sudden, because Israel believes that Iran is enriching uranium to develop nuclear weapons, the US president already believes that.
Yes, you remember last year when Joe Biden stopped or told Bibi Netanyahu not to strike the Iranian nuclear assets. And that was during Trump's campaign period. He said, no, that's what he should be hitting. You remember? And he has said it in the last 15 years. He has said he will never allow Iran to have a nuclear weapon. So his mind is made up. He asked them to stop uranium, not just having a weapon. If you know the deal he put forward, he was not even talking about nuclear weapon. He said they should stop uranium enrichment totally. So not for any purpose. So having enriched uranium facility or having nuclear power, it could be used for civilian purposes. It could be used for other purposes apart from making weapons. But he doesn't even want them to, he wants them to stop it altogether. So it's not about making weapons here or not making weapons. The deal he put forward was to stop, dismantle, and forget about their uranium enrichment program. And of course, you know, the Iranians will never accept that. They didn't accept that, and here we are.
And
It
and
was a
so
trap.
right, and so the Iranians are also preparing, a response, a more elaborate, ambitious response to Israel and to the United States. And the Supreme Leader Ali Khamenei says that the U.S. Should know better than to threaten Iran with comments like, they could take out the leader, or that the president is considering, also joining in with Israel to strike Iran's nuclear site. There's one in particular that they're targeting. What do you think really would the U.S. would gain from joining these attacks with Israel? Um, because this really is supposedly Israel's fight, but of course the U.S. is worried if Iran does develop nuclear weapons, they would be, as there would be long-range weapons that would be able to hit the United States, at least decimate a few islands close to the U.S. That might be as far as it goes, but they do pose a threat to the United States. But what kind of win would it be for President Donald Trump?
Okay, for Donald Trump, it's a low-hanging fruit. Iran is already weakened. Last year, IDF took out their missile defense system. Iran right now is blind. They don't know what's happening in the sky. The Iranian sky is now a playground for Israel. Israel for the IDF. Now, Donald Trump has failed in all his promises, all his campaign promises. So this is a low-hanging fruit for them. He promised massive deportation for migrants, about 15 million. For him to do that, he should be deporting about 10,000 every month. He has not done that. He talked about ending the war in Gaza. The war in Gaza, Joe Biden managed to, at least bring it to a stalemate or ceasefire. It was not, as at the time Donald Trump took power, the war had kind of, the hostilities had kind of subsided to the extent of there was cessation of hostilities. Now the conflict has intensified. There's a lot going on there. So he's failed on that one. He said he was going to end the Ukrainian war in one day. Of course, we are about 6 months into his administration, not 6 months, 3 months. In fact, from he took over in January and we're in June, that's 6 months. He has not, in fact, the war has intensified. 2 days ago, Russia reigned, but the biggest, the most devastating attack on Ukraine took place 2 days ago. So he has failed on all his promise. He promised economic reforms. He brought about the chaotic and then crazy tariff regime. It failed. So every other thing has failed. So the only thing, the low-hanging fruit now, that is this war, which the Israelis are already, like I said, Iran is already weakened now. So he's going to jump into it. He wants to jump into it. At least that would be one campaign promise fulfilled.
Indeed. Dr. Charles, thank you so much for joining us on the program today. I don't know why, but it never seems like we ever have enough time to have
Yeah,
these conversations.
we are still starting. We've not even said anything.
I
There's a
know,
lot to talk about.
I can feel it. You're getting warmed up. Well, thanks again. You're so kind to join us on the program today. We appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
We're off on a short break now on The World Today. We'll be right back. Welcome back to The World Today. To the weather now. In Tokyo, temperatures have reached nearly 35 degrees Celsius, unusually high for this time of the year. As residents adjust to the intense summer heat, Tokyo residents are now equipped with parasols, portable fans, and bottled drinks in hand as the Japanese Meteorological Agency issues heat stroke advisories across the country. High temperatures hit western Japan, including in Tajima City, in Gifu Prefecture, where it had reached 37.6 degrees Celsius. According to the Tokyo Fire Department, more than 50 people have been sent to hospital due to heat strokes. According to local authorities, one person has died from a heat stroke in the nearby Kanagawa, Japanese prefecture.
I'm pretty much treating it like it's August right now because this is standard weather for August. You'll see a lot of people around have the parasols. So I actually have a parasol that if I'm going to go for long walks, I'll go out in the early mornings and late evenings and try to avoid the heat during the day.
While in southern China, heavy rainfall caused severe flooding in Huaji County in Guangdong Province. Floodwaters emerged or submerged more than half of the roads with widespread power and internet outages reported. State media says over 78,000 residents have been affected by the flooding, with more than 29,000 evacuated. No casualties have been reported so far. Earlier this week, the county issued a red alert for heavy rain, the highest in China's weather warning system. Media report says the Suijiang River, which flows across the county, exceeded its warning level for the third time since Sunday. As of this morning, water levels at more than 23 measuring points across 18 provincial rivers surpassed warning levels. The Huaji monitoring station recorded a peak of 55.22 meters. There's 5.22 meters above the warning line, marking the highest flood level since the station's establishment. Yes, and a volcanic eruption in Indonesia sent an enormous ash cloud more than 6 miles into the sky, disrupting or cancelling dozens of flights to and from the tourist island of Bali. Indonesia's geology agency said that the Mount Lewatobi Laki eruption unleashed an 11-kilometer hot ash column over the tourist island of Flores in south-central Indonesia. Officials issued the country's highest alert and urged tourists to stay away, at least for now. According to reports from the Denpasar International Airport, dozens of flights have been halted in Bali, marking the disruptions due to volcano. They included domestic routes to Jakarta and Lombok, as well as others to Australia, China, India, Malaysia, New Zealand, and Singapore. Oh, you wonder why they're all going into a bomb shelter in Israel's Tel Aviv, where people are taking shelter as they hear those sirens signaling the Iranian strikes coming through to the city. But, well, down in the shelters, a totally different story. It almost looks like a party. A mixed Arab-Jewish neighborhood, 2 Cuban salsa teachers putting on some music, and of course entertaining those who are there, giving an impromptu show in front of more than 100 people, and interestingly, about 15 dogs, who I think were interested in the dance as well. They started some salsa music on a portable speaker, grabbed the hand of fellow dance teacher Anna Kanile. Both have been dancing since 1993. New homes in Israel must be built with safe rooms. These ones just dance to help pass the time and take their minds off the current situation, which is the airstrikes going on between Israel and Iran. And that's the world today. Thanks for watching. I'm Amarachi.